We are here in the Sony booth looking at one of the most highly anticipated games. Well, not at this moment. We're with Dana Jan, who helped create the game, and that is The Order 1886, which I predict will be a big console seller.
In this age, the convictions of a knight hold little comfort.
I played the demo, and it's a really interesting world you've got there. It's alternate history. It seems like we have very futuristic weapons, but in a past version of London. What's going on?
Right, so what we chose to do with The Order 1886 is set it in a very believable, realistic, late 1800s Victorian-era London, and then kind of surprise you with the fictional elements that we added to it. And you mentioned the weaponry, which for us is kind of a cool opportunity to take science fiction and embed it into what is the Industrial Revolution era. So it was challenging to try and find a way for these weapons to feel like they could coexist with these characters and not feel like they stood out too much, but make it seem plausible.
So the one I used it seemed like I had to fire a gun to create it was a metal shotgun or thermite rifle, and it made a cloud, and then I was to ignite the cloud, and everyone within the cloud would also be aflame. And then I think I saw another character with a lightning gun. What sorts of weapons are we looking at here?
There's all sorts of weapons. One of the really fun parts of this project was actually coming up with unique ways to create new functionality from a shooter standpoint. So the Thermite Rifle you mentioned was one of the new ones that we released this E3 and kind of showed off the functionality and strategic ways of using it. It's a two-part weapon, as you mentioned, so one of the things you do first is you can scatter a bunch of the thermite dust everywhere, which has a few properties to it. Actually, the AI will react to it, and if they get caught in the cloud, they start coughing, which is good for kind of like stunning them. And if other AI see the cloud, they try to avoid it so they won't take cover on places where there's thermite cloud. And then, of course, if you fire the flare, which is the alternate fire on the weapon, into the cloud, it ignites, and so everything around it catches on fire. As well as the arc gun you mentioned, which Isabeau is carrying in the thing. It's basically a weapon that Tesla's been prototyping, and it holds this huge electrical charge that basically fires a crazy shot of lightning and evaporates whatever it hits.
I was trying to use that one, but I could only look at it.
Not yet, not yet. I promise, though.
Damn. Well, one day. Tell me a little bit about the black water and the black site.
So black water is actually a resource that the Knights found, and it's got some really interesting properties to it. It allows them to prolong their lives. So they actually they live like 10 times longer than the average human being, even though they're still mortal. And it also heals them. So if they get hurt, if they get like severely wounded, they can drink it and actually they'll start healing. So it's kind of this thing that it's a blessing and a curse. You know, they have the ability to kind of live longer than us and heal themselves if they get wounded, but they also outlive everything that they know and they love. Like people around them live normal existences. Another byproduct of drinking black water is the black site that you mentioned, which kind of it allows Galahad and the Knights to enter a heightened state where they can almost predict and see things, before they happen. So they can really focus in on something, and you saw him actually like pulling out his pistol and targeting guys, and they're just barely able to react in time before he can shoot them. So for us, that's a cool mechanic that allows you to just kind of like really quickly on the fly snap to a target and take them out.
So this seems to be taking full advantage of the next-gen capabilities. I was told by the person who was demoing for me that the cinematics I was watching were being generated live. They were not pre-rendered.
That's right. Yeah, we actually don't have a video player in our engine, so all the cinematics and all the game, it's all rendered real-time all the time. The characters, yeah, you change one thing, like Galahad's mustache is half missing, it's missing in the whole game. So what's cool about that, too, though, is like if you get shot, say, going into a cutscene, you're going to see that blood persist on the characters. So it's got some benefits to it. It actually helps, I think, keep things cohesive and consistent, but at the same time, it's also really cool because for us, our characters in-game look exactly the same, so we can take advantage of that by having them talk and speak without going into a full-blown cinematic and keep the narrative going over the gameplay.
So am I able to customize the characters to an extent then?
There's no character customization in this game, but you will see over the course of the game the knights themselves actually change into whatever gear it takes for the different scenarios. So I'm looking forward to actually people getting a look at what we have in store for them in terms of what the characters are wearing.
Very cool. So I did get to use the black side a little bit. It seemed more kind of like it was slowing down time. Is there anything else going on there?
So for us, we were looking at ways of kind of giving somebody like an advantage for doing some of the more core mechanic work. So the whole game is spent like taking cover, shooting at guys, aiming and moving, where you're really using the whole controller. And we were like, well, if you do that, what if we just built up this meter and allow you to then go, wow, I want to just almost like smart bomb the encounter and say like, hey, if there's a guy who pops up with a grenade, boom, I hit the button, activate black sight, and you can actually whip to that character while he still has the grenade in hand. You can shoot it in his hand. As he's throwing it through the air, you can pick it up out of the air. So it's this thing that I think people are going to find a lot of good uses for it if they kind of pick the right moment to do it.
So is there a certain level of strategy or unique to each player then that comes into play.
I mean, there's a lot of strategy like that you have to employ for the different classes of enemies that you're going to encounter, and Black Site is just one of the tools that we're giving the player to kind of figure out how they want to deal with them.
We have no news on what those other cool features are just yet.
Not yet. I mean, we're going to release obviously more information along the way, but for now, what you saw is kind of what we were talking about.
It's very cool. It did not disappoint. Is there anything that you hope people take away from this E3 about the Order?
I'm really hoping that people walk away from playing the demo and watching the footage that we released at the press conference, and they want to see more of the game. I think that's the biggest thing for us, is knowing that there's people out there that are like us and that we've been making the game for them, and that they're actually really happy to get into this game and get their hands dirty.
All right, success, at least with one. I am sure thousands, but that's just incidental. So the Order is coming out early next year, February, I believe. And we can check that out only on PS4.
On PS4.